Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammy and Nathan Yeager.
Hello and welcome to Date Forever. In this week's episode, we're chatting about maintaining a strong and happy relationship after kids. The things we touch on are the importance of continuing individual hobbies, the challenges of time management, and using humour to move through challenging situations. But before we dive into that, Sammy, what's been fueling you up this week?
It feels like it's been forever, but we managed to have like 3 dates on the weekend.
I know, we had a few, didn't we? It was good.
It was so nice. So I entered the tail end of last week with like a really energy. I really didn't have anything left, and you just met me with where I was at, procured sushi, delivered it to me on the couch, and we hung out and listened to I guess like, is it J-pop, like Japanese pop music? Is it the same as K-pop?
I
J-pop?
guess so.
I guess Australian, you don't call it A-pop, do you? Japanese pop music. And drank green tea, whiskey highballs, took me straight back to Tokyo.
Yeah, delicious.
Via our couch. Yeah, and then we also managed to have, a little brunch date at home on Saturday. And then Sunday we spent a whole chunk of time together at the beach. Yeah. And then finally went and saw the new Elvis movie.
Yeah, that's my fuel up. Yeah, going to see the movie and having that little date. So it was so good. It was a really great movie, and yeah, just really nice to learn something about someone that I didn't know and
the King
with you. Yeah.
It was such a great movie too.
It was really good.
Baz Luhrmann is just creative genius in my eyes. And Moulin Rouge is one of my all-time favorite movies. So I always love whatever he does, and I think he's just got such creative flair. And yeah, it was definitely a movie worth seeing in the cinema. So yeah, it was really novel, and I got to have a choc top.
And some popcorn. Yeah.
So that was your fuel up too?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, going on that date. And I think that a lot of our dates recently have just kind of been around food. So it was really nice to do an activity with you.
Thanks for taking me out.
No worries. But now let's dive into this week's ep.
Today we've got Nicole Lako joining us. Nicole is from Happy Couple After Baby, and she is also one half of a happy couple, as well as a licensed psychotherapist, consultant, and coach in California. She has 17 years experience helping couples and parents of young children to navigate relationship building, parenting challenges, communication, and connection. Nicole created Happy Couple After Baby to provide couples the blueprint for maintaining happy and satisfied relationships after becoming parents. When she's out of the office, she enjoys spending her free time outdoors playing with her husband and 2 children. Welcome to the show, Nicole.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you.
Hey, so I want to go back. My hunch with any of these kinds of coaching experiences is that you had an experience yourself, which then prompted you to dive into this niche of helping parents. So I'd love to go back. Tell us a little bit about how you ended up happy after baby.
Well, I was trying to figure out in my 20s what I wanted to do for work after I had graduated from college, and I did a lot of social work in various settings, and I eventually went to graduate school to be a psychotherapist. And soon after that, I was getting experience. There's a long licensure practice here in California. It takes a couple of years to get your license. So I had to get a lot of hours, and that steered me in this direction of visiting preschools and working with teachers and working with parents on child development, the social emotional needs of children. And I loved the work. I loved working with parents. I loved helping them understand children, understanding ourselves, and communication. And so I started to also do that more in my psychotherapy practice, which I have full time. And I just molded and developed into something I just focused on full time. I love working with couples, love working with parents who are trying to figure things out and make the adjustments that they need. And it just also became a lot of fun, especially after becoming a parent and then having that own experience myself of really being able to see how, as a couple, my husband and I could just stay together and just continue being a team. It just really changed who we became as a couple.
So this interest was pre-children for you?
It was, yeah. I didn't have children for I didn't have my son until maybe 5 or even 8 years into that particular work. So I got a lot of experience with it. And it just, when work doesn't become work, when it's just fun and, you always feel like you're learning and you're making these great relationships, you're meeting great people. It just fed me in those ways, and it really inspired me.
Mm. So what are some of the things that you see with parents who are struggling with that sort of transition from just the two of them to 2+1 or more than one?
Right. Well, you lose a lot of your time. So something I like to address with couples is identifying what is important to you in terms of your own individual time, what you like to do, what are your hobbies, some rituals that you have, and then things that are important to you as a couple. And of course, you're certainly not going to be able to do all those things with the same regularity that you did, but you know what they are, you know what your partner, your husband or wife, what is important to him or her. And you keep that in mind and you remember that. So, like, hey, it's been a while since you've gone and played a pickup basketball game. When are you going to do that? Or, hey, you haven't been to yoga in a while. I'll watch the baby. Why don't you go tomorrow morning? So we're thinking of one another and we're thinking of ourselves too. So when we're having needs, we're expressing them and we're vocalizing them and sharing them.
You've obviously mentioned that like this time constraint, or you do lose a lot of time. So are there some strategies to kind of blocking out some time or to forward plan a little bit more to be able to, I guess, manage both your new commitments as a parent, but then also, some of these things that do keep you as an individual and do fuel you up?
Absolutely. So again, I mean, let's use the pickup game as an example. If that's something that a partner does every Saturday at 10 o'clock in the morning, and that's really important to maintain after having a baby, then like this is kind of the time that I really want to carve out right now to do for myself. And my husband goes and does something for himself. Most times, of course, I'm encouraging that because it's important for him. And then that benefits the whole family and that benefits our relationship. Conversely, it's the same thing. When I do things for myself, I'm taking care of myself. It's just good for the entire family as a whole. So it doesn't help for me to be resentful when he goes off to do his thing. And that's just the complete opposite of what you're trying to achieve there. Each other's time is, like I said, it's limited, but it's valuable and it's important. So how can you respect and really encourage one another?
So what kind of happens if couples don't do that?
Well, some of that resentment can build. And sometimes we can lose our way, or we can lose parts of ourselves individually, and we can lose part of what we had in the relationship before having children. So that's why, again, it's so critical to have that conversation before becoming parents of, these are the things that are really important to me. These are the things I want to do, that I want to maintain, because you don't want to establish that resentment. You don't want to lose touch with your friends, right? You want to still stay connected to other things and to other people.
So if couples are in this stage where they're talking about having children and planning for making that transition at some point in the future, what are some of whether or not it's like conversation starters, or like what are the things that couples should be talking about? Because I feel like there's so much that in parenthood, like you can't conceptualize, but you really become game fit until you're in it. And it's just not possible to know what you don't know. So if anyone's like looking down the future and going, I think this is something that we might like to do, what are some of the conversations they should be having?
Well, first and foremost, when I think about my husband and our relationship, we are a team. Like, we were a team before becoming parents. Actually, because, it was difficult for us to get pregnant and have our son. And so we already had faced some adversity. So I knew he was my teammate. And so I feel like that's a really important piece, that you have a good team and you have each other's back and you're in this together. because certainly when you're parents, you're going to need that validation too. But the other thing that I like to help expecting parents with or newer couples is establishing rituals. Because when you have practices in place, even when children come along or there's other changes in your situation or your relationships or you're moving, whatever happens in life, you have these rituals, you have these practices in place. So a couple of examples are meeting either once a week or every other week to talk about, to set up your plans, like whether it's vacation plans or what your schedule looks like that week, or any sort of decisions you need to make together as a couple, kind of the logistics, boring business part of couplehood, just having that regularly. Having conversations too, where you're really supporting one another and listening to one another, especially around stress. And this should be stress that's outside of the relationship. So your work stress with family or friends, anything like that. And you're talking for about 15 or 20 minutes together. Ideally, this would happen multiple times a week, but these are practices that can be less or more. But you're really practicing that active listening. So if you're the speaker, you're sharing openly. And when you're the listener, you're really paying very close attention. You're not jumping to solve any problems. You're just showing that you're listening, you're validating, you're really empathizing and showing compassion. So those are a couple of examples of some rituals that you have before parenthood that can really help afterwards, because you already have these moments where you're connecting and you're really spending time together and connecting with one another.
Mm. So, Nicole, we know that you're in a relationship. We'd love to know a little bit about your love story.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, we've been married for 11 years, together for 16. We met online, and this was, I kind of call it like the middle school years of the online dating world. It was pretty early. It was like 2006 or something. So it's very different now when it's just, swiping left or right. So we met online. I was a city girl riding my bicycle up and down the hills of San Francisco. He's a country guy in the suburbs on the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge. And we met for a drink. He was late. He was very late. And he had called me on the way, but then he came with this whole story how someone was crossing the street and dropped their laundry, and then he went and helped them. It's kind of funny in those moments when you're meeting someone for the first time. You're like, is this really a true story? I definitely believe it to be true. Yeah. I know. I believe it to be true now, but I was a little skeptical then. And, we just had a really good conversation. It was really refreshing. It was a fun date for me. We're both from the East Coast, the New York, New Jersey area. So we had some stuff like that in common, just in terms of values and being comfortable, being open and sharing with one another. And again, we just had a lot of fun. So I think it was like on our third date, he was driving me home in a muscle car, which I was never this muscle car person. I was a bicycle person, and we were driving up and down the hills of San Francisco, and he was blasting Motley Crue's Girls, Girls, Girls. And I just remember thinking, okay, like this is really different, and I love it. I love it. Yeah, because I think on paper we were kind of different in terms of our interests and our hobbies. But that was just a moment for me where, ever since then, I just followed my gut. I knew he was someone that I could trust. He was certainly someone I could have fun with. And we did have a lot of fun. And I think that was kind of different from some of the prior relationships that I had had. And, that's exactly what I said in our wedding vows. I just knew in my gut that he was a person to trust and to rely on and to be with. So, so we were together for about 5 years until we got married. And I eventually left the city, which was a big deal for me. I left the city and moved in with him. And kind of the rest is history.
Yeah, amazing. So give us some timeline. When was that? When did you meet?
We met in 2006. Yeah. And
I'm trying to do quick math. It's like 15 years now?
Yeah, it's 16. Because I think we just made our 11th wedding anniversary. So 16 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
So I'm guessing with the work that you were doing at that time and in your career, children was always part of your plan and something that you wanted to do. Talk to us a little bit about the challenge of knowing that was something that you wanted and then navigating the fertility issues.
Yes, it took us longer to conceive than maybe your average couple. And so being patient in that process, managing the emotions that come with that, it could even feel a little business-like after a while. If I'm sure other couples can understand this, where you're tracking your cycle and all, all those things. And our first pregnancy didn't work out too. So then we kind of faced that loss together, and which was really hard, especially the circumstances of it. And I have to say, I felt even closer to my husband going through that process with him. It was just, I don't know, there's just something that really made me feel so much closer, because we were just really vulnerable in that place. And then we had our son, and so here we are. Okay, this is what we wanted, and we did. And there were challenges too with that, with just adjusting to sleep deprivation and my son's big emotions, and just trying to be patient and navigate that together. We've been doing that now for 8 years, because he's 8 now, my son, and we still have our moments. But again, I think it just comes back to that teamwork of, I know that we're always on the same page, or even if we're not, we can listen to one another and figure it out together, or at least have a follow-up conversation, so that we understand where each other is coming from, to just be able to make it through the tougher times.
Yeah. Nicole, I wanted to honor what you shared there around the challenges with your first pregnancy, because that's horrible and I'm sorry that you went through that. But I also know that that's very common, and it's also not something that we talk too much about. I have a handful of girlfriends who have, either had challenges falling pregnant, including actually staying pregnant with reoccurring miscarriages and those kinds of things. And it's really, really hard, and it's not a grief that we talk a lot about. So I'm not sure if you have any wisdom or anything you'd like to share around like your experience and what maybe you wish people knew.
Well, I think it's just so important to talk about it, to share with others that this happened. Because when I did that, then I had other family members come forward and say, oh, that happened for me. Especially one of my family members had the exact same experience that I did, because it was a chromosomal issue. So, and a physical deformity issue. So I wasn't so alone. I didn't feel so alone. And so I think we have to talk about that and share, which is a very vulnerable thing to do. But if we're not willing to step into that vulnerability, then it's going to hinder our ability to heal and to move on. And I could relate that to being in a couple again. I mean, it's so important for us to be vulnerable with one another, because then how else do we feel held and understood and heal in ways that we need to, and thrive in all the other ways that we want to?
Yeah, and those kinds of moments, like in a relationship or in a journey through life together, like you do have the opportunity to grow through those shared crises, or have it help you drift apart. So I think those can be opportunities for growth. And like you said, that you came out stronger because of it. But yeah, I mean, it's not something that I've personally experienced. Nathan and I don't have kids, and we have never tried to have kids. But it's hard. And I know for a lot of my girlfriends that the question's been like, was it something that I did? Is there something that I should have been doing differently? So much like personal, blame, I guess. And it's hard to shift. So I'm pleased that you then have gone on to have your son.
Just something to add to that. I mean, that's where the gentleness needs to come in, of just really being so gentle with ourselves. Because I hear some of that, where women might blame themselves for things like that happen. And we just need to love ourselves as much as we would love another in those moments.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that sometimes that can also create so much fear of like, okay, yeah, we are pregnant, but now we can't really celebrate it because we know that this might not be it, that this still isn't the finish line as such. And it's not until you really have that healthy baby in your arms that you can truly celebrate, because especially if it's been a reoccurring problem. And I know I've got friends who have been through that, and it's what should be an exciting, looking forward to growing this little person is still loaded with so much fear and apprehension that any moment it could all not result the way that you want it to or are hoping for. So
yeah. So you're obviously a coach in the child and relationship space prior to having kids. So I guess what was the biggest kind of realization, or the biggest
aha
after having kids?
I mean, it's funny. I mean, everybody tells you, your time is not your own. You're going to lose your time. Sleep deprivation is hard and it's real. So you know these things up here, but it's truly when you start experiencing it that it's a big aha. And it might also be a big oh crap moment because it's just because now you're experiencing it. Now you really know, like, okay, this is what it's like to drive to work after my baby has woken up 3 times tonight and over the night, and I'm exhausted, and or I'm having challenges with breastfeeding, and I still need to go into work today. Whatever it is. Yeah, it's just the aha moment, I guess, for me was really, in some ways, an oh crap moment because we were figuring things out. We just, you try to rely on other people's wisdom, but at the end of the day, we just really had to rely on each other and keep figuring things out and just keep trying.
Yeah. I would love to know, like, what are some of the things that you and your husband do in your own relationship now to keep it fueled up?
Well, something I'm proud of is, well, there's the teamwork that I've already mentioned, but humor has always been a big part of our relationship. And I really do feel that that's something that carries us through, especially through the hard times or especially through some of the tension. Like even if I say something snappy at him, not the right tone, or I think the other day I said something in a tone that maybe like even my own mother would have used. And I caught myself in the moment. And then I just made a joke around that to kind of diffuse it. He laughed too. So that got figured out and washed away pretty quickly. But humor is pretty big for us, I think, especially when we're facing some challenges or something that we can really just make each other laugh and let go a little more easily than we might have otherwise. The other thing we do is, and this is something that John and Julie Gottman do in their suggest in their research, and it's a lot of the approach that I take in my work with couples, and it's called the emotional bank account, where you're making these positive deposits kind of in your shared relationship bank account. And it can be really small gestures. It doesn't need to be these grand things like getting flowers or going to this expensive restaurant. So we're very good at just sending each other those nice texts during the day or calling one another to check in on each other, giving each other a little massage or the simple hugs and kisses, just those really small, consistent, everyday gestures to show that we're connected, that we're thinking of one another, that each other is special to the other. So I think that, and I think that, it doesn't matter whether you have children or not, that's a really important piece for couples.
So if people haven't heard about this idea of the emotional bank account, can you just give us a little bit of a rundown? Because obviously there's the positive side of things. You can put things into the bank account, but then there's the negative as well. And there's kind of this ideal ratio as well.
There is, yes. So the ratio is really it's 20-1. So just think about that. For every one negative piece, you want to have 20 positive. But yeah, the idea is that you're, together, you're making these positive 20 deposits into your bank account and then the one negative. Because if the negatives keep drawing from the account and you don't have the positives there, then you're really depleting your resources, so to speak. You're depleting that foundation and you're straining the commitment, you're straining the friendship between the two of you. And the friendship is vital. So the emotional bank account just really keeps that connection, that friendship intact, and helps with intimacy, helps with all the pieces, really.
So, Nicole, I remember reading about that ratio for that John and Julia Gottman have researched, and that the ratio isn't 20-0, but that 1 is actually very important, that there is those opportunities for conflict, challenge, overcoming things. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a big part of it is how do you resolve conflict as a couple? It's key to do it respectfully. It's key to do it kindly. Even in the moments where maybe you don't, where you're not kind and respectful to one another, that then you revisit those disagreements and you work through them. So describing how you felt in the moment, what triggered you, what about the incident or the conversation triggered you, really actively listening to one another and repeating back what you hear and then coming up with a plan and saying your apologies and acknowledging where you might have made a mistake or you were at fault. So, of course, those negatives are necessary because they do happen. And we need to be comfortable with how to work through that.
But I guess it's a bit like a movie. Like if you knew exactly what was going to happen and it was all smooth sailing, like it would be boring,
Right.
And there would be no opportunities for the hero to grow and evolve and have those light bulb moments. So I think that's always really important to sort of point out, like we're not shooting for like this perfect, nothing, no conflict ever happens kind of relationship, because those opportunities, those negative withdrawals do create opportunities for growth and improvement in your relationship.
Yeah, that is a perfect relationship, having the negative interactions or having conflict. That's all part of the perfect relationship.
Yeah. And I think as well, like if there is no conflict in your relationship, is somebody holding back from the relationship and trying to avoid the conflict and not actually bringing up things when there might be some disagreements or something that's not ideal, but they're just letting it ride. And how long can you kind of sustain not bringing those things to the forefront?
Right.
Back to that resentment thing that Nicole mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
The big R.
So, Nicole, I know that in your relationship, you've got a real commitment to continually dating, and that's been like kind of a real key thing for you and your relationship to keep it strong. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. And, I need to fully disclose here. Sometimes we're not the best at it, right? Especially after becoming parents, because like I said, with time, it's harder, but it's always on the forefront of my mind. So for us, something that really works is the day date. So our dates don't have to happen in the evening. Sometimes, especially when you have little ones and you're super tired and you haven't gotten enough sleep, like doing an evening date is exhausting. So we have become masters of the day date, my husband and I. And that's all thanks to daycare, usually because if our little ones are there and we, maybe we'll take a day off or something has shifted in our schedules where we can go have lunch together at least, go for a quick motorcycle ride, do something together like that during the day. And we're pretty happy and relaxed. I'd say the pandemic has helped with that too in some ways, because I've been working from home more and my husband always worked from home. So we can steal away and do those things a little bit more, which is great. So kind of looking for those day dates. We, again, pandemic related, we've done Zoom dates sometimes with friends. It's not exactly the same as seeing them in person, but it really made us rethink how to stay connected to friends, especially those that live far away now. It's like, oh, we can have a date with them. It's just being on Zoom, even though they're in Chicago or somewhere else. And again, it's not exactly the same, but it is time together with friends and you can still laugh and talk. So we'll do something like that. We have fun moments where we have a hot tub. That's something that we used to have and do before becoming parents. And that's a real fun connection time for the two of us. It's just kind of soak in the tub and hang out, have a drink. We've even done it use the hot tub during the day. And maybe my kids are watching a show and we can kind of see them through the window, but we're having our time outside on the deck. So,
and with the bubbles on, you can't hear the kids anyway.
Right.
Drowns them out. Yeah.
Hopefully they're fine. So we've just kind of found these other ways to make it work for us. And occasionally we have our evening dates. We get out, we'll go have dinner and a drink, or we'll go do something special. We'll go to wine country for a couple of hours and have fun doing that. So I certainly, with couples, I recommend if they're ready to, especially, and they have children, to plan an overnight, whenever they can. And again, when they're comfortable, because it's really good for the couple to do that. It's good for the child even. It's not going to ruin your child by going away for a night. And I think the other thing that I'm proud of in our relationship is we schedule our intimacy. And this is another Gottman recommendation. And for some couples, or maybe most, that seems like it just kind of takes the fun out of it. There's no spontaneity there, which I completely understand. But I kind of argue the opposite, because when I think about when I first started dating my husband, I would think about what I was going to wear and my makeup, and maybe he would clean his apartment, maybe. And, you would kind of plan for those little moments. So it's okay to plan this too. And it actually becomes something that you look forward to. Okay, and then it's kind of fun. It kind of plays into our humor as a couple that we kind of look forward to it. Or even if you're kind of not in the mood and you're not looking forward to it, to know that you're carving out specific time for one another together can also be good enough. So just as simple as just turning off the phones, turning off the television, and laying down with one another. Maybe that leads to something, maybe it doesn't. But still, you're making this intentional effort to be with one another, and you see where that leads. So those are some of the things that we do together.
I think even just the question of like, if we were to schedule intimacy this week, when would it be? Like, even just asking that question makes you go, okay, well, are we making time for this? Like, even if you don't want to put a block in the calendar, even just like considering, okay, over the next 14 days, have we made time available for our relationship and that part of our relationship? So yeah, I'm all for that. Nathan and I, Sunday nights, you'll be very hard to get hold of us. That's when we shine. So yeah, big advocate for it. And for us, that works really well because, like you said, it's something that we look forward to, but also it takes a bit of pressure off of like trying to navigate when else we might prioritize that that's not to say that that's the only time that we're doing the fun things, the fun adult things, but it's definitely like that's our time. So yeah, big fan of that.
And I think like you said as well, like some of the spontaneity may not be there, but because we've got a dedicated time for it, but also like it builds anticipation, like when you know that it's coming up and things like that. Like it,
well
and that's
said.
fun as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you get to create ritual around it.
Yeah,
like,
you do.
Yeah. And I was going to say, if people aren't totally comfortable with that, then you can always say something like, hey, I've been missing you, in the next couple of days. Would you mind initiating? Or, I might initiate, just kind of putting it out in that way. But again, not putting it out in a critical way, putting it out in a expressing needs way.
Yeah.
Offering an opportunity. So, Nicole, thank you so much for joining us. I would love to know if there's like one last final tip or tool or resource that you would recommend for couples to work on, whether or not it's something daily, weekly, monthly, yearly.
Well, I think it's helpful to have something like a cheat sheet. So you kind of write down the things that you do as a couple to connect. So even some of these examples that I gave in our conversation so far, that you just write them down. You put them somewhere visible. Maybe it's your refrigerator or someplace else. And if you're noticing that you're not connecting, you guys are feeling a little off, you kind of look at that and it's like, what haven't we been doing as much lately that we need to get back on track with? So I think little cheat sheets like that can be helpful.
A little reminder.
Exactly.
So, Nicole, thank you so much for joining us. To say thank you, we have given a year's worth of seeds to help a family grow some nourishing food in Malawi. So this is the gift that keeps on giving. So thank you so much for joining us and making that possible via our partnership with Buy One, Give One.
I love that. Thank you.
No worries. So, Nicole, if people want to connect with you or learn a little bit more about what you do, how can they do that?
Well, they can certainly find me on Facebook and Instagram at Happy Couple After Baby. And then I have a website, happycoupleafterbaby.com. And there is a checklist there that you can grab for free. It's 6 easy steps, mostly for expecting and new parents. But I was looking it over the other day, and it's still relevant for couples who haven't yet had children, especially the last 4. So hop over there and check it out.
Awesome.
Yeah, amazing.
Thanks, Nicole.
So much.
And thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. This has been really fun.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.